Hey, everybody. Good to be here. Um, going to do a little bit of a news roundup, talk a little bit about labor. Um, I am definitely ready for a nice little vacation slash technology cleanse. Um, as I say, as always, at the beginning of these things, the best thing to do is become a patron at patreon.com/TMBS. Patreon.com/TMBS. Get the whole Michael Brooks Show experience. I have my earbuds in. Can you guys all hear me well? Um, Thank you. The Philadelphia show was amazing. It was so awesome to meet all of you. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So go over to Patreon, become a patron, get the whole thing. That's what allows us to do everything we do. I'm so happy about last night's Nina Turner, Milton Alamati interview. Obviously, Nina Turner is an incredible leader and an inspiration to us all. And Milton Alamati is a mentor, a friend. He's just such an amazing human being. And I love getting an opportunity to have him on the show. I hope everybody checks him out. Tulsi had an interesting Joe Rogan podcast today. It's worth listening to. And I hear you loud and clear, buddy. Great interview with Nina, by the way. Um, if I have time, I will check that interview out. I'm going to try to take a little bit of a tech fast the next couple of days. As always, with these, try to get to about 300 bucks or above in the super chat. And I will ask your questions. That's really important for maintaining all of us and all the awesome work that the Great Forest does with the YouTube channel. I want to just start out of the gate by talking about the UK elections and why, if you're in the UK, you absolutely need to vote for the Labour Party. And if you're in the UK, you should be doing everything you can to elect a Labour government, which is obviously a huge uphill battle. And look, Jeremy Corbyn, he gave not a great performance with Andrew Neil today. There's no doubt about it. However, it's in many respects a no-win situation. The main propaganda and distortion vehicle that the UK corporate press has been using to terrorize Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party and distract UK voters from the austerity crisis, from the threats to the NHS, from the self-evident, symbolic, and horrifying leadership of Boris Johnson and the Tory party is this anti-Semitism thing. Now, we've gone into it in more depth on the show, and there's no doubt that mistakes have been made. Thank you. There's no doubt, by the way, that there's a much deeper problem of anti-Semitism across the United Kingdom, and of course, much more seriously and much more systemically in the Tory party. It goes without saying. And also, to the extent it was in the Labour Party, it certainly goes back to Tony Blair and New Labour. But the bottom line is, though, for purposes of this, is that this is really like almost like a Pepe Escobar style full spectrum information warfare that has been aimed from the beginning of Jeremy Corbyn being elected as leader of the Labour Party. I believe tonight, I think you're right, D. I think you're right that tonight is the last night you can register to vote in the UK. If you still have an opportunity to do it yet and you haven't done it yet, I would register. Man, is it urgent to vote for Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell, and the Labour Party. But they've been going to war in the most ruthless, systemic, dishonest, personally cruel, and disgusting way. And I'm finally becoming a patron in December, as I'll be getting my first paycheck in 11 months. Solidarity and gratitude. Well, congratulations and thank you so much, man. I'm looking forward to it. Go Labor. I think it's time for Warren to get close to dropping out. So, in addition, so Bernie can pull ahead with the addition of Bloomberg to the race. Lula Livre. I would love, obviously, at some point, of course, we want to see Warren drop out and endorse Sanders, although the electorate is tricky. Um, So, again, the odd thing is amongst the elite conversation, in a way, there was this sort of intellectual debate about Sanders and Warren, which wasn't a real debate in many respects. But, as far as voter overlap, there's a lot more obviously right now between Warren and Buttigieg in the professional managerial class madness. Phone banked with four friends yesterday. Collectively, we made 300 calls for Bernie in an hour. Time to step up our game, people. Yes, that is so awesome. So the bottom line is that the UK Labour Party has put out a manifesto that would be so good for the United Kingdom. It would be the first push back after 10 years of devastating, ruthless, and systemic Tory and Lib Dem savagery and budget cuts, as well as, by the way, racist, xenophobic, and also toxic and dangerous environmental policies. Also, continuing the tradition of the UK as a fully paid up partner of US empire, implicated in toxic foreign policy, including in Latin America, but most especially across the Middle East. You have an opportunity to elect a serious, visionary, humane, democratic socialist government led by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, who held that flame for generations, who fought against Thatcherism, who fought against Blairism, who fought against the austerity terrorism of Cameron May, and now the clown fascism buffoonery of that jackass Boris Johnson. And every step of the way, there has been a vicious, disgusting, and systemic media war against a for real progressive Labor Party. And there's also been a bunch, this sort of bougie Lib Dem backstabbing vote, a delusional Green Party vote, all moving the ball, distracting from the fact that the Labor Party is going to save the NHS. Without them, your NHS could absolutely be sold to Donald Trump and the predatory, disgusting insurance and HMO companies that we need to eliminate and get rid of in the United States. Believe me, you don't want to deal with them. They are, in many cases, a literal death sentence and will cause an enormous amount of suffering and danger and undermine the incredible accomplishment that is the UK National Health Service. Then you got the Green New Deal, rent control, any number of other emergency initiatives that the Labor Party is putting on the table to, for the first time in a decade, actually do something for the working class, the middle class, and the poor in the UK, of which the Tories and the Lib Dems have waged unrelenting war. As for Brexit, giving the people a second, option, basically a second referendum. I mean, look, this is the only way to move forward. Of course, Brexit was stupid. Of course, it was misplaced, delusional, populist anger. There is a great left critique of the European Union, but that's not a real vehicle in modern politics. But at the same time, you can't, radical centrists, of course, are the most allergic to democracy. And that's not going to work. It's not strategic to entirely ignore the people's will. And I will say that toxic delusional influence of the Lib Dems, who are the full partners in Tory destruction, poverty increases, and austerity, they want you to make Brexit it, nothing else. Don't fall into that trap. So I want to get to some other topics and talk about some other things. Definitely get more of your super chats. Let's get them back going. But look, and obviously today, this was a coordinated smear. You had more of the anti-Semitism dishonesty. You had more, and then you had people saying he was anti-Hindu, which actually comes from far-right extremist Hindutva sources. This is incredibly dangerous. It's a coordination of the world's barbarism against Jeremy Corbyn. What do you say to Warren supporters who say they're socialists? Well, I mean, look, you're not a socialist. I don't know. I don't. I think we can get too hung up on labels, but if you're a socialist, at the very least, you have to have a remotely solidarity-driven foreign policy. She has been late and totally failed on the coup in Bolivia. She supports coup mongering in Venezuela. She supports Israeli apartheid every step of the way. She had nothing to say about Lula. She has nothing to say about debt relief. She votes for military budget increases. I mean, come on, stop. If it's just enough with the bullshit. I purchased Shapiro's book, Right Side of History. I'm going to write an in-depth review of it when I finish. I like torturing myself. Believe me, I had to read that for my book, Torture. Hey, I don't hear enough conversation about brokered contested convention. Can we run through some hypotheticals to explain how it works? Um, in the future, I will be looking more into that and really trying to game out what an actual strategy would be if, as an example, Bernie has the most delegates and they try to steal it from him. Hey, Michael, I'm having trouble understanding Andy Barkin's endorsement of Warren over Sanders. It seems like his views line up more with Sanders, but I guess there are quote unquote leftists who support Warren. Thank you, Pythagoras. I think Andy Barkin, look, obviously I have a lot of admiration for him and a huge amount of respect and concern for his personal suffering. But I think, look, he's very much of that kind of, liberal foundation world. And that group is not going to be on the grassroots, real structural momentum. They're going to want to have a brokerage, and it's a different dynamic. Can you please do an impression of Jeb Bush stuck in a tree? uh, I can't. I asked my mom, and I uh, can't get out of the tree. Uh, my Jeb's a little rusty. Best part: officially joining Bernie as a paid California field organizer. Thanks for the hope and inspiration, TMBS crew, of giving me in this trying year, Alex. That is so fucking beautiful, man. Congratulations. That is awesome. Please, please, let's talk about that more. Impression Dave Rubin equating and praising the Bolsonaro Bolivian coup and Bolsonaro because they're fighting against the SJW left. Well, I knew that the coup leaders in Bolivia really don't like the SJW flag, and they're doing a lot in the battle of ideas, just like Bolsonaro. Sarah, thank you so much. And go capitalist here. If we get Bloomberg. I'm not going to read that one, but that was a hilarious call. That call today when that dude said that was so funny. When will the U.S. call out Bernie's opponents who criticize him for yelling and waving his arms as anti-Semitic, like they call Liz opponents sexist? So, one part of me just wants to reject all of that, kind of bullshit and disingenuity. But on the other hand, I think we should play a little bit of that. And anytime you complain about Bernie Sanders waving his arm, you are engaging in incredible anti-Semitism. I agree. And thank you. I don't understand this one, Pythagoras, because I'm bad at math, but thank you for that 5. Much appreciated. Philly Live was a great experience. It was so cool meeting you, Matt, and David. I intend to support Canary and hope to get involved further. Eric, awesome. You're the man. Have you heard Destiny's critique of your recent Pete Buttigieg video? I'd love to hear you guys talking. I haven't heard it. I will try to check it out. Uh, I am not going to be persuaded on Pete. And Pete will sink. It will actually be very entertaining when Joe Biden's PAC goes after Pete Buttigieg. That will be some very dynamic and fun politics to watch. I also really want to continue to emphasize having a critical and intelligent dialectical position on impeachment. Is that a new photography ring? I see light. I see in your eyes. Or are you just happy to see us? I'm totally happy to see you. You give me a couple of free super chats and slide them your way. Keep up the great work. Going to become a patron tonight. Nicholas, thank you so much. And guys, everybody who's a patron and comes to live shows cannot, and the super chats, I love it and appreciate, and I'm honored by you all. Donald Trump broke the law. Donald Trump, this administration is a white supremacist monstrosity that operates concentration camps, rips children out of their mother's arms, and also detains old people. I mean, this is, and grandfathers. This is a absolute administration and Republican Party of grotesque oligarchy, extremism, and barbarism. And there is a huge cost to all of mainline centrism and liberalism completely empowering the intelligence industry, the defense industry, and reverting to supporting at sometimes incredibly dangerous and hawkish foreign policies, um, purely because they are only able to see one thing in politics, and that is Donald Trump. They don't even have a systemic understanding of the Republican Party. That's why they could still actually delude themselves, some of them do, that some other Republicans might actually vote for impeachment. United States land of the free and the most children in detention, right? So I think it's extremely important to recognize that this is a legitimate process, not get fall, look, not for a second, and go back and look at the conversation the great Abby Martin and I had about Donald Trump's disgusting, grotesque mass murder foreign policy, empire expanding foreign policy. The new immigration stats were crazy. I need to look at those. And at the same time, understanding that the national security state, the intelligence services, and bureaucracy in general is not the vehicle to destroy Donald Trump and his political project. That's a political mass movement project. That is the lesson. Bernie Sanders defeating Donald Trump is infinitely more important than any of this process. And people waking up and recognizing their position with regards to politics, with regards to capitalism, democracy, the potential of socialism and post capitalism. This is also what's incredibly important. And that's a kind of mass pop culture problem with how these stories have unfolded too, is that they turn this into a spectator sport and not something to be engaged. And I actually had this great line in Adolph Reed in this great 1990s essay. I think it's called "Oh, Liberals Do I Despise." He talks about liberals uh, wanting bureaucratic process to save them from power fights. Now, again, conversely, impeachment could absolutely be an incredibly beneficial thing, and Donald Trump should be absolutely gone after in every way. But we need to hold all of these things. Lula Livre and Friends Don't Let Friends Vote Lib Dem start the Lib Dems are bullets. Lib Dems are so awful. I have a strange feeling that Sam Harris supports Buttigieg. I thought that Pete Buttigieg was making some of the right noises about using counterinsurgency programs, and he fired the black police chief. So in other words, we need to be serious about these ideas. Making some of the right noises. Can you recommend any unbiased sources that give detailed economic and political history of places like the Soviet Union and China? Love the show. Thank you so much. I really, that I need to get back to you on. I'm not sure about unbiased sources, to be honest with you. I think what you should do is probably read a variety of, like, you got to read just a variety of sources and then start to kind of synthesize for yourself what keeps you motivated. I mean, I guess, some combination of really intense concern about these issues, which I do have, and there is a real worry and empathy there. And then I find a lot of the work that I get to do to actually be really fun and engaging, and some personal ambition as well, for sure. Some combination of all of the above. And then other stuff, meditating, exercising, stuff like that is super helpful, although I definitely don't get enough sleep. Reading class notes. How do you feel about the critique of Cornel West? Reed says his politics are left style and right substance. I liked West. Well, actually, they're totally tight right now, and that's kind of very. That critique is just of a different time. They're campaigning together for Sanders. I love Cornel West. I think the critiques more broadly that Reed is making of a certain intellectual type in the '90s is in some ways even more relevant now. But I won't get too hung up on that. I mean, I stand both. Awesome show last night, comrade. Becoming a patron soon. You're going to see Talib Kweli and Yaslin Bey. Yeah, Most Def in Boston next Friday. Black Star. I'm not, but I would love to see them. Ew, Sam Harris post-coital impression. That was. I mean, that made a lot of the right noises. The interview with Nina Turner last night was amazing. I hope she comes back after winning the primary. Allah willing, Sanders Turner 2020. I love it. Solidarity from an on the clock worker. Hope you're having a good day. Much love from Northern California. Love you back, Thomas. Thank you so much. Thank you, Evan Johnson. Thoughts on Norman Finkelstein's appreciate the show. I've read Finkelstein in the past, and I've appreciated him. Um, haven't followed him as much recently. Will the R's elect an even bigger monster in 2024 and 2028? I mean, I think I don't know, but like again, Trump, you know, Orban, Johnson. I mean, we have the template here. Another problem at Israel. And look, Israel as a I mean, look, Israel's obviously always been an ethno state and so on, but the rightening and absolute increase of just rank racism in Israel and the political connections there between the right in the United States and Europe, it tracks. Another problem with Warren's Medicare for All proposal, most of it is trillions, is funded by unrealized stock gains. What will happen during the next economic crash or downturn that many people project? I know less about that part of that, to be honest with you. Um, but I think the head tax is very bad. And then obviously the just complete nonsense of saying she's going to push the second part of it in the third year of her term. I mean, that just obviously fundamentally, this is just not serious. Last month, a friend on record, the U.S. admitted zero refugees. New international student enrollment is way down. Skilled worker visas denials are high. Yeah. Look, strategic and systemic white supremacy. That's exactly what it is. What's your take on Obama sticking his hands into 2020? No confidence in Biden, Bernie fear? Both. I love you back. Both. I think that clearly Joe Biden is really in a weak position. Although, again, I think he's stronger than a lot of people anticipate. He's still leading in the polls. Um, and but then on the other, but there's a lot of concern about his performance. And then Bernie's steady surging. Why is Bernie relatively soft in Israel? I think partially it might be because of his age and his generation, which is understandable. But the reality is that obviously the critique of Israel is much more systemic. But what Bernie has put on the table in terms of critiquing Israel and actually putting some concrete policy and talking about the human value of people in Gaza, it shouldn't be. But by American political standards, that's radical and visionary and incredibly brave, and we should understand it as such. The Treasury will wind up sending refunded checks to 1%, and Medicare for all will go bankrupt. That's your interpretation of the Warren plan. NOI Obama's comments on high hopes cult dance. Devils, 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 devils. I don't know how many more times you need to hear me talk about these motherfucking devils. Look at the high hopes dance. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. God, I wish that Obama was around. Could a very British coup happen to Corbyn as PM? Well, I think that let's focus right now. Back up from the camera. Light is ghosting your complexion. Love you, bro. I think that we need to actually look at what is happening in terms of the media warfare now. Would love to connect, share my story. $500,000 in debt because of cancer in college. 26 years old. I also need to talk to Guillermo independence in Guam. I would love to talk about independence in Guam. Obviously, Puerto Rico is a colony, but also Guam. I want to learn more about the Virgin Islands. I want to also talk about, I mean, it's a state, so less bad now, but obviously the colonial history of the United States and Hawaii as well. But Alex, I'm amazed and I appreciate it, man. Um, Bernie's pro-Israel because Bernie is pro-Israel because he's Moretz and he is awesome. Get over yourselves. Well, I mean, look, Moretz is completely irrelevant, and Moretz is not my politics. I mean, I'm a one-state solution, democracy for all guy. But of course, that's what I just said. Obviously, what Bernie has said, and even just representing a Moretz position in the United States, is incredibly brave. And I think his genuine position, which is a gargantuan, massive upgrade over the rest of politics. So, as with everything with Bernie, we're not going to hold him to a higher standard, and he's taken a lot of risk, and his policy will help a lot of people. By the way, get a and also get a massive amount of pushback if you're even tangentially in the left, you realize that Tulsi is more in common with Tucker Carlson than she does with Noam Chomsky. Um, I'm a very big critic of Tulsi. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm probably 60% sure on that. I mean, look, I've said a million times. There's certain areas where, yes, Tulsi's taken a very clear position on the prosecution of a Julian Assange, which is incredibly important. On the other hand, Bernie has put forward by far the best whistleblower protection legislation of anything. Her critiques at times in the military-industrial complex and military veterism are great. On the flip side, they are left isolationists, not anti imperialist and solidarity driven. That's why you don't hear anything about Free Lula as an example. And her positions on South Asia and the Middle East absolutely sync up much more with certainly in India with the extreme far right. Um, and there's obviously a comfort with people like Sisi in Egypt. And, we've been over this difference a million times. I understand when I watch a Democratic debate, I certainly find myself liking Tulsi relative only Bernie 2020. Come on, somebody. I find myself liking Tulsi relative, nothing to say, just love the show. And of course, the majority report. Thank you so much. Liking Tulsi relative to the just, unbelievable, relentless bullshit of Klobuchar and Buttigieg and Biden and Harris. And, but look, there are powerful and significant and radical problems with Tulsi. Uh, and occasionally I run into somebody who likes Tulsi, and she's their second choice to Sanders. And Tulsi's a badass. She understands imperialism. That puts her and Bernie top two in foreign policy. I don't think she understands imperialism. I think she understands military adventurism and neocon overreach. But somebody who spent several years on television complaining that Obama would not call it Islamic terrorism, who calls herself a hawk on the war on terrorism, who's concerned that John Walker Lind was getting released from prison, who didn't call for freeing Lula, who doesn't have a global critique of capitalism. No, no, that's not somebody who understands imperialism. That's not. I understand relative to other people. I get it when she's on stage, and I get it when some of the attacks she gets from places like The View and all the Russia stuff, and of course Hillary Clinton is disgusting and stupid and vile. But there is absolutely a right wing isolationist streak there. There's a connection to Hindutva there through Modi. There's some rhetorical sopping to the Breitbart crowd on immigration. I'm sorry, not with it. And there's some people that like her and I will listen to on certain things because they're not trying to tell me bullshit about all of those areas I just identified, which are real and have super significant problems. And that's when you run into, when folks just can't be real. And that's a major problem. I mean, look, I have some of the same dynamic with Warren people. And, look, nobody likes to have their candidate criticized. I'm feeling good about the state of the race. I definitely think that Bloomberg and Patrick coming in are a good signal and very helpful to Bernie Sanders. Besides that, though, I think, the only use for having all of these despicable people, let's just take these New York mayors, these just Rudy Giuliani and Mike Bloomberg. Would Bernie be better off doing Fox News town hall during the next Democratic debate? I'm tempted to say yes, to be honest. But I mean, he can't do that because of the optics. I can never think of a question for these things. So here's 10. Well, thank you. I don't think I think that would be too problematic with the optics, but in some ways, look, they're so biased against them and they're so unfair to him. They never let him talk. They're constantly trying to prop up ridiculous candidates like John Delaney and Amy Klobuchar. And obviously, if he had some type of town hall, it would be an infinitely more substantive and valuable conversation because over 90% of the time, he's the only one saying anything substantive or valuable. Um, I mean, honestly, I mean, look, he shouldn't. He needs to do those debates. There has to be a way of. I don't know. They just need to be working the reps, I think, way more aggressively at the outset. How can you do NOI Obama reacting to the dead Kennedys? Yeah, it's really clever. It's only weird white people who like to listen to rage-filled ambient noise and make jokes about their own dead heroes. That's that Mayo brain shit. Uh, I think, but I think beyond, I think, oh, the portion of Medicare for All proposal can be devastating if Medicare is implemented under plan. It may be worth conversation with Dr. Richard Wolf. I'll definitely think about that. Hopefully, obviously, I think have Professor Wolf back on again in January. Um, in addition to, yeah, but I think the only value, let's just stick, thank you for introducing me to the work of Adolph Reed. Adolph Reed is amazing. I um I think that that Rudy Giuliani and Michael Bloomberg are two case studies that you could really look at 1980s and 1990s, um, the raw racism, authoritarianism, and brutal capitalism setting the stage of making New York this neoliberal hellscape through the sort of old school ethnic politics, viciousness, brutality, and racism of Rudy Giuliani, paving the way for the technocratic terrorism of, or the technocratic schemes, excuse me, of Mike Bloomberg, turning New York into this giant gentrified money laundering real estate ground. Those two case studies tell you so much about how the modern world works and is the only value for those two odious individuals talking about anything at all. What does the left not, why does the left now talk about the legitimate Syrian revolution? I'm disgusted by every time someone says the so called moderate rebels to smear them. Well, that's a really complicated topic. I am totally, well, look, I don't know how to satisfy everybody on this. Where I agree with you is I have no doubt that the major part of the initial uprising in 2011 against Assad was organic. It was legitimate. The Assad regime was, a sort of fascistic political structure with neoliberal politics. Climate change was also driving serious problems in the agricultural system. And just as there was in that time across the region, there was an organic uprising to yet another discredited authoritarian regime, which is what the Assad regime is. The Assad regime responded with absolute savagery and brutality. There's no doubt about it. And then on the flip side, and part of it, I think, designed by Assad when he did release and help circulate jihadist forces. But then let's be real, the CIA and the Gulf countries absolutely did fund right wing terrorist Salafist groups. And a lot of so called moderate rebels, in fact, I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I'm late. Love you so much. Left is best. I love you back. Um, there were, in fact, a lot of far right forces, a lot of, and also I think on both sides, frankly, just gangsterism and warlordism. And so, look, several years ago, I talked to a leftist filmmaker, Syrian, who had fled and was documenting the atrocities, primarily of the Assad regime. But he was well aware of the atrocities committed by the groups backed by the CIA and the Gulf states and the Saudis. Hope everyone's having a good night. I hope you're having a good night. I came from the land down under where I'm poor, but I can still see a doctor. Bonus points if you sing it, but seriously, thank you from everything. Thank you so much. Love the show, man. Keep up the great work. I appreciate you guys all so much. I can't tell you. But I tried to though. But at the same time, I said, look, what can we do to support the left in Syria? What can we do to support the remnants of that organic uprising? And he was like, look, we're marginalized. We're out. So all of these factors are the reality. Corbyn hits Boris with this guy's going to give you a USA healthcare system. Boris most go on defense and deny. Centrist Dems should pay more attention. Absolutely. TMBS inspired me to actually get involved in my community, working on a GND style, Green New Deal style legislation in Minnesota. Never forget what a difference you make. Much love. Oh, that's amazing to hear. That is so fucking awesome. Thank you so much. Thank all of you. It's incredible. A Bernie organizer in California, the work you're doing in Minnesota, all of you. Keep up everything you do, Michael. You're truly unique in your perspective and coverage. Love seeing your show grow. You're very inspirational. You're too kind. I appreciate it. I'm honored. As I always say, I'm really genuinely, absolutely honored by all of you. It's really the only word I could think of. Um, but yeah, I mean, so and I think in Latin America, it's a slight, cannot express how much your show has broadened my horizons, allowed me to have conversations with friends directly from many parts of the world, and also expanded the horizons of those close to me. That is amazing. In what episode do you discuss the Sheila Mimbe? Love your show. Hope you discuss him more in the future. Well, he was actually the building block of yesterday's opening monologue. So check it out. I hope to interview him someday. I'm a 30-year-old electrician who's politically restless and always feels more invigorated when I listen to your show. That's so awesome. Man, you guys are amazing. Honestly, this community is amazing. It is so cool to see so many great human beings. Really. Uh, and then, the dynamic in Latin America is different to me. I think, look, it's one thing when you are opposing U.S. imperialism, U.S. regime change efforts, full stop, including even against regimes that are just not redeemable. They have their own atrocious records and trajectories, and that certainly would describe the Assad regime. Even as, of course, I opposed the U.S. bombing campaigns and opposed, the CIA and Gulf adventurism. Now, of course, obviously, I back and support the Kurds in northern Syria. Left is best. In Latin America, I think, again, that's even in Venezuela, at the end of the day, Chavez radically cut poverty. Maduro is fighting on all fronts, sometimes absolutely making his legitimate own mistakes in a full scale US led but European aided effort at regime change in a country where, even with the flaws and mistakes, there is absolutely no doubt that Maduro um, absolutely is infinitely better for the underclass, the indigenous, and so on than anyone else. And then you look at a place like Bolivia, where at the end of the day, Evo Morales was a very good president. And obviously, look, these are secondary things. You just oppose the regime changes and the coups, but it's very important to be mindful about how aggressive the propaganda is and how we can, again, even getting into conversations about Evo Morales. I mean, Evo Morales, you kidding me? I mean, this is a country that hero worships Lee Kuan Yew, who was an authoritarian capitalist who ran Singapore for decades based on his purely economic performance. Well, if we're doing that, Evo cut poverty by half. But of course, the capitalist West doesn't care about indigenous poverty in Bolivia. If Corbyn wins, do you see it having any positive influence on Bernie's grassroots movements, like we can do it type of thing? Absolutely. And your optimism and focus on Bernie should not be dependent on, Corbyn. But of course, I mean, look, there's a very close relationship between the United States and UK politically, and obviously they parallel each other. Keep crushing, turning all my friends to your content. Left is best. Ethan, thank you so much. When's your book going to launch, brother? Can't wait. It's going to be out in February. So in the next, basically starting in December, these streams, and I'll do streams on Zero Books, you're going to hear a ton more about that. Do you think dissolving the Palestinian Authority and being under the full occupation of Israel is a feasible path to achieve a one-state solution? No. No, I mean, look, the Palestinians need their own representation, obviously, and the bottom line is that Israel is a viciously racist country. It doesn't matter what the configuration is. You got to solve the problem at the root. I was trying to tell my classmate about Bolivia, and he looked at me like I was an alien. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you could recommend some books. Maybe you should start reading a little Noam Chomsky or something. Get a little bit engaged. Watch a little TYT. Watch a little TMBS. Um, all right, folks. Most perplexing aspect of Generation Z in your view? I don't know. That's an interesting question. I gotta have to pass on that one. The most perplexing. I'll just do like the easy one, but it's true. There's just too much technology. People need to put down their phones, man. Dipset. All right, guys. I need to wrap this up. I'm going to be mostly off of the grid the next few days. I love all of you. I appreciate all of you so much. Click like if you haven't subscribed yet. Immediately click subscribe and click the bell. Let's get to 100,000 subs on YouTube. Let's do that. And of course, first and foremost, patreon.com/TMBS. In the first week of December, we are announcing our next TMBS live show. They're an incredible amount of fun. Let's sell out another one. Come see us for the first time. Come see us again and go over to Patreon and get way more extra content. I appreciate all of you. Thank you all so much. Oh, let me just read this. Your content's been indispensable for broadening my political horizons. Socialist works would be so dense to read. Any new books you'd recommend? Any new books I'd recommend? Was Jim Morris CIA plant? Um, you know what? New books I'd recommend. No, this is not deep socialism book, but this is about Emerson Mnangagwa, who took over from Mugabe in Zimbabwe, and I'm actually learning a lot from that. But honestly, read Cornel Rest, read Adolph Reed essays, read Mark Fisher essays. That is my advice as of now, and definitely, if you can, work your way through the David Harvey series on Capital, which you can listen to as a podcast. All right, guys, love you all. I really do. I appreciate you all so much. Love your show. Your knowledge of world affairs is so impressive. Thank you for having Queen Nina on. She brings fire to my soul. Bernard Sanders 2020. Yes, exactly.